So, you got a filet mignon. You want to be fancy. You want to be some sort of tactical culinary hotshot. Stick around and I'll show you how I would do it. Midnight Range TM, thanks for visiting the channel. We'll be right back. Alright, so beef Wellington, a classic, something that some people have had and loved and get it for special occasions. Something that some people have never had. It's kind of scary and pretty, overwhelming for some people to think about doing at home, but it's not really that difficult. Just like anything else, step by step, take it slow and worry about your techniques. So, we're going to start off with, this is cremini mushroom. Baby portobello, you'll see it called as, but cremini mushroom. Nice, firm, really firm mushroom, which is nice for this because it's not going to totally cook down to nothing. So we've basically taken 6 ounces of creminis, and I cheated and used the food processor and just did a nice small dice. If you're feeling superhero-ish, you can do it by hand, but I recommend a food processor. Just chunk it up, chunk them in half or quarters, put it in there and give it a couple of pulses, and you'll get this nice small dice or chop. We're going to add to that a teaspoon of garlic. I know these don't sound like a lot because that looks like a lot of mushrooms, but it's really not when it cooks down. Teaspoon of ginger, half a teaspoon of salt and pepper, and a pinch of chili flakes. And literally, we're just talking a little pinch. Nothing crazy, just a little bit. Quarter teaspoon or so. Because I like working with the some Asian stuff, we're going to be using a little Thai basil. This will probably amount to about a half a teaspoon of Thai basil, something like that. And you just want to give it a quick chiffonade. Nothing too crazy. Okay, maybe a half a tablespoon or a little over a teaspoon. And then some scallions, about the same amount, probably a tablespoon cut, nice and thin. Okay, no crazy cuts or anything like that. So we're going to take this, we're going to run it over the stove, and we are going to cook this at a very, very high temperature because we want the mushrooms to sear. And we don't want it to just wilt down and weep and turn into mushroom water. We want to actually put a hard sear on it, and that way, as it cooks, the moisture evaporates and you really condense those flavors. It's going to turn into basically what you would call a mushroom duxelle in French, or something similar, with a little bit of different flavors in it, but same idea. In a past video, recent video, we broke down a filet mignon, or broke down a tenderloin into a filet mignon. Here's one of our 6-ounce fillets. Now this has already been marinated. Half cup of burgundy, half teaspoon chili flakes, half teaspoon of black pepper, 1 1/4 tablespoon of salt, kosher. Get rid of that iodized stuff. You want to use kosher, trust me. Do a flavor test for yourself. Taste the kosher salt, and then taste the iodized afterwards. You won't use iodized anymore. Tablespoon of ginger and a half tablespoon of garlic. So this has been marinated overnight, and you can see it's taken on, kind of a purplish, hue to it. That's great. That's the burgundy kind of soaking in. Now for this amount of steak, that's way more than you'll need for one steak. You probably need about a half an ounce per. So 1 day is okay. 2 or 3 days is great, especially a fillet that's kind of tender and soft. It really just soaks into there. So we'll be back for this guy. We're going to go sear the mushrooms next. Okay, so while we're over here at the stove, we're actually going to do a couple of things. We're going to cook this mushroom filling, the duxelle. We're going to sear the fillet. You always want to sear the fillet before it goes into the gets wrapped up and goes into the oven. Sear it to a rare, and that way it finishes off as the Wellington is cooking. And we're going to take that pan that we seared the filet in, and we're going to make the sauce in there for later. We'll just warm it up later as everything. We're a little bit out of order, but you'll see what I mean at the end. So these pans are super, super hot. This one especially for the mushrooms. So we're going to hit it with about a half tablespoon of oil, and you'll see as it hits the pan that it's really, really hot. We're going to go with that. So, as it sears, as it cooks, you'll notice that you won't see any moisture in the bottom. It's because it's evaporating off as it cooks. We're also going to put a touch of oil in the other pan. And we're going to sear that filet nice and hard on each side, and then throw it on a plate and let it come to room temperature. With the mushrooms, we're going to sear them really hard and then put them on a little bit of paper towel. Just a little bit so that it doesn't weep, picks up some of the moisture. But we're also going to taste this for seasoning as it's still warm. We're going to let this come down to room temperature also, and then we're going to wrap them together in the puff pastry. Alright, so just turn the heat off, and you can see how much this is cooked down. We're going to take it out of the pan and throw it on just a plate with a little tiny bit of paper towel. We're going to let that come to room temperature. The filet's been seared on both sides, but you can see it's still very rare. Okay? But that's what we're looking for, because that way it won't overcook while the Wellington is cooking. Okay? So we're going to take this, let it rest also. Both of these things we're just going to put on the at room temperature, and we're going to do the sauce, and then we'll get to wrapping the Wellington. Okay, so we've taken the pan that we cooked or seared the filet in, no oil, nothing in it, on a low heat, probably a medium-low heat. Okay, we're just going to bring it up to the point where we're going to make a pan sauce here. It's going to be a shallot, burgundy, brown sauce. We are going to thicken it slightly with just a touch of flour and a little bit of beef stock. So this is maybe 2 tablespoons of julienne shallots. We're going to saute that with about a tablespoon of butter. We're not really sauteing, this is more like a sweat. We're just going to kind of sweat it down, soften the shallots a little bit. We're going to bring some of those flavors up off the bottom of the pan while we're doing this too. We got those natural flavors down there from when the filet was seared. So we're going to cook this down for a second and then add a little bit of burgundy. It's probably a tablespoon and a half of burgundy. You can use other red wine too. We don't want to let it cook down to nothing. We're going to throw just a pinch of flour in there. I mean, that was a 1/16 of a tablespoon or something, almost nothing. And a little bit of beef stock. And you'll see it just naturally thicken up just a tiny, tiny bit. Taste it. We're going to turn it off, and we'll come back to it when we're ready to plate up. So, here's where we have some fun. All right, so puff pastry really is an amazing product. It's made by making a dough, okay? And I'll use the puff pastry itself as an example. Make it a dough. Then you actually take butter, chilled butter, and you put it across the top, and you fold it. You put it in a cooler, you keep it cold, you pat it out, make it bigger, and then you book leaf it, where you fold this side, you fold this side, and then you fold this side over again. And that one layer of butter begins to multiply, basically, exponentially. So if it's one layer of butter when it's folded, so it's dough, butter, dough. When you fold it, then it's dough, butter, dough, dough, butter, dough. And it gets to the point where, the different pastries use different amounts of layers. Some will be 50, 60, 80, all the way up to the thousands, where you could have thousands of layers of puff pastry, where it's going dough, butter, dough, butter. Now, when that gets hot, the butter gives off steam, and it makes the dough puff. That's how it works. It's a naturally leavened dough. It's really amazing. It's really awesome. So here's where it has fun. Here's where we have some fun. Sorry. We're gonna cut a square. Okay. You want to work with this straight out of the cooler. If you don't work with it straight out of the cooler and it gets soft, you can ruin it. It won't, if it gets tacky and smushes, and it won't rise. So, here's what we're going to do. Kind of build it backwards in a way. We're going to put a layer of these room temperature mushrooms. Okay. And then we're going to put the fillet on top. And we're going to wrap the 4 layers, or the 4 corners, around. This is just whole egg, beaten, no milk. I want it to be just whole egg. Now, sometimes you see them round. I actually think it's pretty cool to not be round, okay? So what I like to do is put just a tiny, tiny amount of egg wash in these little corners, okay? And I'll pinch them. Okay? Now what's neat is this gives, when the Wellington bakes, a really cool, puffy, like square shape. It's really neat. Okay? So we're gonna put this on a sheet, tray, with a piece of parchment paper. Not wax paper, but parchment paper. That's really important. You don't want to use wax. Because the wax paper can give off, it can almost melt a little bit. And get a little bit of egg wash, and we're going to lightly brush the whole thing. Now what this is going to do is give the whole thing a really nice sort of golden brown sheen to it, almost like a crust. Same thing, same idea as bread. A lot of baguettes and things like that are brushed with just a little bit of egg. And you saw I cut a little bit of this off. We're actually going to use this as a fun little garnish. You can make any kind of shape you want. That's just going to give us a little bit more fun angles when it's done. And we're going to tap that with a little bit of the butter. Now we're going to put this bad boy in the oven at 425 degrees, and we will set the timer. See how long it takes. It's been quite a while since I've done this, so we're going to be experimenting a little bit here ourselves. You need to have the temperature kind of high, because if the temperature is not high enough, the butter won't steam and it won't puff. So that's the trick. All right, so we had this guy in the oven for 18 minutes. You can check it with a thermometer, you can. I just kind of went by gut. 125 for rare, 145 for medium, 155 for what's going to carry over to close to well. So you can see we got a great color to it. Nice and golden brown. It looks a little darker on the camera than I think it actually is, but so we're going to plate this guy up. I did add just a touch more stock to the sauce. You can see the shallots are still there. They're nice and soft. And this is like, what's so cool about this dish is it's kind of a meal in itself. You don't really need to serve it with a starch because you've got the puff pastry. You can serve it with a nice veg. And if you know the channel any at all, you'll know that there's one thing ladies love: the green stuff. Achoo! Gotta put that green stuff on there, and we're gonna double charge it with some green stuff today. Hey, come back here, because that just looks nice. Okay, so there's your dish: beef Wellington with marinated filet. Burgundy marinated filet, sauteed shallot pan sauce, puff pastry shell, and your cremini mushroom duxelle. The mushroom duxelle is awesome because it works great as a mushroom pot sticker filling or as a ravioli filling too. If you take that and mix in a little bit of ricotta cheese, doing a mushroom and ricotta ravioli, it's awesome. So what we're going to do is cut into this bad boy. See how we look. And there we go. A really nice medium. I would have liked to be a little less done. But that's okay. Look at that. That looks awesome, doesn't it? You can see the mushrooms on top. They kind of give all that flavor. So I hope you guys liked it. It's not nearly as hard as people think. I hope you try it. And I hope you come back and visit the channel, Midnight Range TM. You can check me out on Patreon if you're willing to help the channel out a little bit. Check me out on Sunday evenings, 10:30 Eastern, for live chats, question and answer, food, and check out gunchannels.com for an amazing website for gun lovers. A lot of great people. A lot of great conversations, great fun. Okay, thank you very much. I'll see you next time.